You're listening to the Human Story Podcast, conversations on the all encompassing human experience.
This is brought to you by Yoked Media.
Well, welcome to the Human Story, where we dive deep into the fascinating intersections of psychology, spirituality, and, well, everyday life. I'm your host, Lincoln, and with me today is my co-host, Shaamiela.
Hi, welcome back. All right. So I want to start off with a quote by a poet named Mary Oliver. And so Mary Oliver is an individual. When you read her poetry, you kind of get a sense of her experience of the world and more so the natural world. And so she's often asking us through her poetry to pay attention and to engage with the world around us and to look to the simplicity of those experiences that we have, particularly in the natural world. And so her quote to introduce our topic today is, "Attention is the beginning of devotion."
I love that.
So what are you paying attention to, human being? That's the question. What do you think of when I say human attention?
It's an interesting topic
It is.
because, as we were doing our own research, I think my mind kind of wandered about attention.
Indeed.
But you kind of think, well, what does it actually mean? Because attention could be so vast. And I think we have so much wealth of information available to us today, but we're so much more distracted than ever before in society. So I think it's a good way to start, Shaamiela, to tell me what do you think is your definition of human attention?
I mean, I think that if we look at I think just linked to what you were saying, the first question for me is, why do we pay attention?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what's the point of that? And because then it's kind of also like, what do I give my attention to? But the thing that comes to mind for me is intentionality, but that's just me, right?
Okay.
And that's probably because I've been influenced by mindfulness.
Yeah.
Which is deeply, obviously, connected to how we pay attention. And because I'm a pretty seasoned mindfulness meditator, and so that particularly is about paying attention to your mind, and noticing what happens. And then obviously extending that to the outside world. And so I think about intentionality when it comes to attention, but I also think about exactly what you just said. I think about how absolutely distracting everything around us is, and the sheer volume of information, visual information, auditory information, sensory information that we kind of almost bombarded with throughout our day. And then, I'm thinking about, like, I don't know if your phone probably has the same feature where they give you an update once a week.
Oh, about screen
on
time.
what you've given your attention to. You know what I mean? And that's always such a reality check. Because it's giving you the hours you've spent, right? And it's showing you where you've given your attention and what you've given it to. And then it kind of makes me reflect on, if I've been doing that, okay, so how many hours did I spend this week? When was that? Was that Monday? Was it Tuesday? What was happening on Tuesday or Wednesday? Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
We like to think we're rational beings and we do everything rationally.
Yeah.
But I think that's a frank reminder when we see that screen time, what we spend our time with, actually where we spending our time. And that's kind of like so evident in terms of how we think we go through the world, being so attentive to things.
Yeah.
Sometimes in a good or bad way. But again, shows testament to me almost that we kind of like, meander through life unaware. We have this bias to think that we're so on top of things and we're so aware of what we're paying attention to. But actually, how much of it is happening on an unconscious level? Like, there might be 5% of things we're actually aware of that we kind of like grasping and kind of fully aware of attention-wise. But then what's the other 95% of that's meandering through our unconscious that we're not actually aware of, And that's the interesting part for me too. Shaamiela, when we come to attention as well, not that this podcast intention, like we said, we always want to be relevant and make sure that we, that it's something that we quite open about, that people can relate to. But there's also a biology aspect to human attention, that we can't avoid. And when we talk about that, there's different types of attention that one gets, and that's selective attention, focus and limited attention. But then there's also something in a default mode network in the brain. It's part of the brain that kicks in when we're not focused on anything specific.
Yeah.
So it can either be something that when we just kind of like in a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a idle state of mind where we're not really paying attention, where your mind can either wander into a positive kind of space. And unfortunately for many people, it can actually lead to the more negative space. And I mean, you've done a lot of work with this too.
Yeah.
And you'll know that when people are idle and they have a lot of time on their hands and they haven't necessarily processed a lot of things that are more topical, but like trauma and stuff, they tend to go to more negative things.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting to me that the brain is such a complex thing and has so many, neurons, synapses, and all these other, connections. But it's interesting to me how we actually place attention and the different types of attention. I don't know if you just want to maybe touch on some of the different types of attention. It might sound very technical, but I think once you kind of explain it in more detail, I think people understand that actually it's what they do every day, and that there are actually different types of attention that they can be aware of.
Definitely. I mean, the things that come to mind for me is, first of all, outward attention versus inward attention, right? So I brought up mindfulness. We'll discuss that a little bit more later on.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect. There's also things like whether or not your attention is focused.
Got you.
Whether it's limited, or whether it's selective. Okay, so I think we all understand selective attention. A little bit like what happens when you're on YouTube or on social media.
Yeah.
Whatever you're selecting, there's an algorithm that's built, particularly for you, in a way that these creators make you feel special.
Yeah.
But actually,
Is that kind of like where, let's say, for instance, you are searching you want to buy a new phone. And all of a sudden, you'll find that every single post thereafter, and you always think like, are these people recording my voice here as well?
I think they are.
They probably are.
100%.
But where everything of that would obviously now appear on your algorithms in terms of you searching.
Yeah. So essentially, like, what you are selecting.
Yeah.
And I think that is often, there can be a time and place for that, like our selectivity. I'm also just thinking about where you are in terms of your day, your capacity, your emotional capacity, your spiritual capacity, your mental capacity. We are choosing to give our attention essentially based on our capacity and also what's a priority in that moment, right? Or in that time of your life, that season of your life. So that's a selectivity. So limited attention, I think, really comes in one of the things that's most topical around that is the myth of multitasking.
It is a myth. We did well.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a myth. So essentially what you are doing is, if you've got, in terms of the multitasking aspect, if you've got multiple things, and I always think about it in the kitchen because, that's where I tend to kind of lean into, the myth of multitasking is where you've got a couple of things going, right? If you're cooking and your kid walks into the room and into the kitchen and they're asking you about something and your mind kind of has to swap to that. So essentially that's what's happening. If I've got the kettle on, I'm cooking rice, I've just started sauteing onions, and my child walks into the room, essentially what I'm doing is I'm just swapping between those different tasks, and I'm giving it sort of almost a limited amount of attention, right? Because I know that there is somewhere in the background, I know that there's all these other things happening.
Got you.
And so I only have like a limited period of time to give to you and all of that.
Yeah.
So the issue with multitasking, though, is that we are not deeply present with each task, right? So now you're going to argue and say to me, okay, I don't need to do that.
Yeah.
Right? I don't necessarily need to sort of be deeply focused if I'm busy in that kind of situation. So absolutely not. It's not like, a life-threatening issue. But I think where it comes in is that if you are busy with tasks that are a little bit more serious. So I would actually say, and this is what I often challenge people with in terms of practicing focused attention and mindfulness, even in the mundane.
Sure.
So that is a mundane situation
Okay.
that I've kind of just,
Yeah.
described, is that the power actually of kind of like learning to be more focused with your attention and also being intentional with your attention
Yeah.
is actually doing it in those mundane
Okay.
tasks. And the reason you do that is because it's not an approach you only want to use in certain situations. What you want to do is train the brain,
There we go.
right? You want to train the brain to be accustomed to engaging in activity
Makes a lot of
in a
sense.
more focused manner.
Sure.
Okay. And so we kind of are saying we want to move away from multitasking.
Yeah.
And giving limited attention. Again, it's relevant.
Yeah.
There are times where you're just not going to get it right.
Gotcha.
And it's not about like, okay, yeah, I am being so, mindful. But if we can spend at least 70% of our time not doing that, I think that is healthier. Yeah. And then, of course, focused attention means that, we enter into a state where we are completely focused, completely present. We are essentially, I think the word that's come through a lot in, we've just been watching the Olympics in the last few weeks. Like you watch people actually become what the phrase that people have been using is locked in, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And I think you and I were talking about through our research and discussions about the flow state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's interesting that you mentioned that because obviously, it's a topical thing. The Olympics has just recently finished.
Yep.
So now they've got a timestamp on the podcast too. But I think it's interesting because I heard one of the athletes say they came back, the relay team that won the silver medal for South Africa. He was saying that, last time he dropped the baton in 2019, it was so hot.
Oh, wow.
And he's glad that obviously this time he could, with the team win the silver medal. But he said what he's very aware of is the fact that if you're not in the mindset that you're the best at what you're doing at the Olympics with other athletes are the top of their game, you're just not going to make it.
Wow.
And I love that because it made me realize the positive intentionality that he realized, like if he didn't go with the right mindset this time, because obviously there was a self-awareness of what happened in the previous Olympics.
Right.
And for him to better that and become aware of what he needed to do, he obviously put the things in place to be assured what he needed to do to win.
Wow.
And I love that because it was just a clear indication that it's not a passive experience. We can actively train our brains, like you're saying. If there's been some disappointments in the past, whether it's been attention or a bit of self-awareness, but more the attention part of what we need to do. And also, very well, there's certain practices that we can do that help us with human attention.
Yeah.
I know, Shami, you do quite a bit of work in mindfulness and breath work as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you maybe want to share from your own experience, if anything in terms of mindfulness or breath work has helped you in any way that you've actually seen tangible results in your life that you can maybe speak of.
Definitely. And as soon as you speak about that, I think about at the beginning of any meditation practice or a breathwork session that I am facilitating, or even for myself if I'm practicing, I'm actually thinking about our different forms of attention, right? So a lot of the time we're almost thinking about attention mainly in the form of thought, right? And so what you do at the beginning of a session is to tap into your sensory world. And you attend to your sensory world, essentially, right? So that's where your attention is. And so you pay attention through the senses. So essentially, I'll ask you, as you sit in this room, Lincoln, notice the smells.
Got you.
Feel the temperature on your skin. And notice the light that passes through your eyes.
Got you.
So essentially, I'm asking you to tune into your senses.
Okay.
And so sensory attention to me, I think, is deeply powerful, right? I think it also helps us to not disconnect from the outside world. Because if I'm asking you to tune into your senses, what we're doing is we're almost amalgamating the two.
Yeah.
We're bringing the outward inward and the inward outward. Essentially, right?
Yeah.
And so that's very powerful practice. And any practice that you start, any session that you facilitate, has to begin with bringing you into the present moment, right?
Yes.
And bringing the person into that. And so often the sensory, like the sensory attention is quite fascinating. Just that simple practice, what that does for how the individual then begins to experience the session or the meditative practice. Not saying that it's going to be amazing because of that.
Sure.
Your mind could still be like really busy and wandering. But there's something about paying attention to our sensory world as we engage with information, in relationships, in the workplace and all of that. And all of these things, I think, all form part of our self-concept.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I mean, essentially kind of also links deeply to self-awareness.
Yeah.
But I mean, all of the words that go with that is really like a deep presence, with your sensory world. That kind of takes you out of your mind.
Got you.
And brings you into the body.
Yeah.
And so, so I feel like that's a powerful, very simple, but a very powerful exercise.
Yeah.
And there's something really calming about asking someone to come. Well, at least what I've seen with some people is that there is something very calming about being able to engage with the world through their senses, consciously. Yeah, because we are engaging with the world through our senses, but of course, the key word here is consciousness.
Got you.
Yeah. Is that something that you pay attention to?
I'd say recently, probably a lot more. Like I said, we like to think we're rational beings and we're always aware.
Yeah.
And like you say, there's certain situations that does allow you to be more conscious with time. Like you say, time is also a precious commodity, just like attention. So if you can get the mix right between the two in your busy schedule, it's, you always try and be present. But I do find at times, like for instance, just preparing for this podcast last night, the week got busy. We wanted to do research, and as things would have it, we both have demanding schedules. So I ended up doing research quite late last night and again early this morning. And I also know in order for me to have my full attention and being aware of it, like you're saying, I need to have good sleep, which is important to me. So I'm aware of how I operate in like a flow state and a good kind of state of how I can pay attention to things and be notice of things. So getting a restful night of sleep was important for me to do this podcast. But also, like you're saying, I love the fact that you're saying try and be more present. It is definitely a practice that I do, and I can see the value of being more attentive in situations. In terms of my relationships with people, I can speak about my son. He's sort of toddler, but I notice when I'm more distracted with things, with my phone, that type of stuff, when I come home and I kind of convince myself I had a busy day at work and I'm owed to this now and I need my space, I realize the disconnect that I have with him when I'm not attentive. And I can see the benefits and the fruits of it when I actually do pay attention to him. So like you said, I can actually see in my own life that when I do pay focus and give attention to certain things, that there is actually a benefit to it. So it's not something that's like an aspired state to work towards. There's actually a tangible, relatable, exchangeable thing you see in the here and now, like you're saying, in the present.
I love that.
So I definitely would say, Shaamiela, it's something that I wish I was more proficient at, but it's getting better. But I can see the benefits of it.
Oh, I love that. That's such a reflection, and it really just connects to something I also experienced this week. So on Thursday, I had a massage, and it was a deeply relaxing massage, aromatherapy massage. And I was voice noting a friend of mine and saying, sorry, I didn't get back to you. I spent my day in and out of consciousness.
And then she felt like that.
Because I was so deeply relaxed.
Yeah.
But there was something I'd read also in prep for this, as you were saying, around how sleep influences our attention, right? And so obviously after that massage, I slept really deeply.
Yeah.
And then the next morning was up quite early, working on this. And I noticed, first of all, in the morning, I probably, for most people maybe, for some people, maybe not say most, your attention and your mind probably does feel a little bit more clear in the morning.
Sure.
Depending on how your sleep was. But I really definitely found that there was a difference to my attention.
Got you.
And my ability to be present after very deep sleep. and the quality of that sleep, right? So the rest aspect and the sleep aspect and, getting the brain to kind of disengage consciously. What that does, I mean, there's an insane amount of information out there around kind of like the impact on sleep and, that sleep has on our attentive state, and our conscious state, our ability to connect and to, I think what you were saying around the quality of that connection, but also that to mention that with sleep, there's a lot of integration that happens.
Okay.
And so that's really important to remember. So I want to bring that back into kind of attention. So whatever you're giving your attention to during the day, there's an integration process happening at night, and that it influences when you sleep.
Yeah.
It influences everything. And so there's something about needing to really take care of the amount of hours you get and the quality of that sleep. That is also important for integration, whether that's, information that you've taken in, an emotional state that you experience during the day. That's important. It needs to, and integration is essentially that thing, finding its place within you, and all of those things again impact the next day when you wake up. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah. That's why sleep hygiene and stuff is so important. Like,
Absolutely.
do you avoid screen time an hour before sleeping? Is the room kind of like in a state where it's, conducive to good sleeping conditions?
Yep.
Do you have any distractions in the room? And I've also found that, again, I'm using the example, but it's perfect for my son, when we put him to bed a certain time at night, if we've done the prepping properly, his process of sleeping like easier works a lot better.
Right.
If we kind of rush things and we get him, it just doesn't work. He stays awake for much longer. But I think it's so important, like you're saying, for me especially, I can really comment to that, is that if I don't sleep properly, I'm also not the nicest person the next day.
Same.
So I'll try and avoid people.
Same, like I'm not a.
So, I think we can both relate to that, but I think it's very important. All right, Shami, attention as a commodity.
Yeah.
Because, that's an important aspect. We have all these things trying to get our attention. And it is a very important commodity. What's the impact of visual attention on attention as a topic, with the influence of things like social media and what we've seen, since the pandemic? We'd like to think that since the pandemic, we're more connected than ever. Whereas, many
Connected
people...
to what?
Exactly. And many people would say, well, exactly that. Connected to what, actually? So, on this topic, with visual attention and the vast amounts of distractions we have, what impact does social media have in terms of our attention span and what we pay attention to?
I think, maybe to begin with the fact that you named it, the commodity of attention.
Yeah.
So essentially, like if we, maybe I want to ask everybody that's listening to think about what that means. It means that it's something that can be bought, and sold essentially, right? Because it's literally in what we said in the beginning, which is you pay attention. What are you paying with?
I'm sorry to say this. It wasn't on the thing, but I don't know if you've heard all the recent stuff about Temu and Shane, like how much money they spent.
Yeah.
So just an interesting thing is it's either Temu or Shane. They spend the fifth most advertising spend with Facebook, which is in the billions. Again, like for attention. So if you pop up for any clothing item or anything you're looking for these days, what pops up? Shane or Temu? So again, like Shaamiela was saying, to me, it is a commodity and people are vying for our attention, with vast amounts of money at it. Then, one has to say, like, what's the intentionality of people seeking our attention these days? How important is our attention to people and brands and stuff like that, It's going slightly off topic, but you know what I mean.
I think it's deeply relevant because I think that it's exactly that. Because again, the idea is that we think about these things more deeply, and more critically, than just to kind of like what's in front of you. If they're spending that amount of money, guess what? Your attention is valuable,
of course,
deeply valuable, because something is feeding it. And I'm just thinking about how. Let's think about if it's a commodity, right? Attention has become a commodity, right? And so that's something that we continue to see. And if it can be bought and sold, I think about it as a form of energy,
Yeah.
right? Because
Agree.
if we think about another commodity, we think about something like money,
Yeah.
right? Again, exchange of something.
Sure.
And so your attention, in truth, is a form of energy that
Yep.
you give to something, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. Like you're selling a form of your energy,
Yeah.
or a form of your energy is being sold
Yeah.
by what it is that you pay attention to.
Got you.
And we have all of these, companies, institutions, whatever you want to call it, vying for that, and trying to kind of like grasp as much as they can
Yeah.
because we are giving it something,
Yes.
right? Particularly if you're not intentional with what it is that you pay attention to. Then one of the other things that, I came across was the fact that visual attention is the most researched topic.
Yeah.
Or the most form of attention, the most researched form of attention.
Attention.
Why do you think that is? I don't think that answers a conundrum.
No, it doesn't.
I think we all know. And, there's a particular form it takes in our daily life, and
Yep.
that is social media.
Yep.
So, I mean, think about the idea that your attention is a form of energy
Sure.
and that, that is, you give that often to media and to social media. And as we know
Yeah.
from the many documentaries that have now been,
Yeah.
released around social media, that is exactly what it's built on, right?
Yeah.
And also, if you haven't heard this, let me say, as someone who is in the field, that
Yeah.
they employ people that are majors in psychology.
Wow.
Okay. So these
that's
are people
interesting.
who understand human behavior,
Gotcha.
right? They understand
they
the human
manipulate
mind.
it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And they understand the neuroscience of it,
Gotcha.
of human attention. And so these are things I think we need to, again, pay attention to.
Yeah.
And just to be aware of, because, what is our experience of social media?
Yeah.
You and I can both talk about that.
Yeah. For a long time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I just want to add, that I will say that the most important, not the most important
Yeah.
thing, but the thing that's been the most striking for me is when I take a break from social media, the difference that makes.
Yes.
So I'll just,
Yeah.
I know that you want to add something.
Yeah, I think very true, Shaamiela. I think with regards to social media, I'm speaking from my own experience. I find at times when I'm scrolling, whatever is happening, is that there's almost a bit of anxiety that happens that I can feel building up inside, like I'm scrolling, doom scrolling.
Yeah.
And it's just like wasting time. So they've actually gained my attention to be doing that. Like you say, whether they use an algorithm to give me the same kind of content, but it doesn't make me feel in a good state at the time. So I have to be very aware of how much time I spend on social media because, again, like I said, that has an impact on my peripheral relationships and everything else and the way that I engage with the world after. So either I look at it from a negative or positive reflection. If I'm genuinely had a good day and it's things that I genuinely tend to like and see, I can kind of manage it. But if I've had a bad day and I'm doom scrolling to actually just help me numb the distractions of today or the disappointments, then it goes into a deeper, darker depression almost.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, we don't need to mention the many studies that is now out around kind of how there's a rise of anxiety and depression, very directly linked to social media. I was also thinking about something that really became apparent to me and that I read about. And again, I often feel like I experiment on myself first and go, okay, so if this is what it's like for me, imagine what it's like for,
Got you.
everybody else.
Yeah.
And so when you go, we're all familiar with the term emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So if you can tap into your sensory experience, imagine what that feels like, right? But you don't need to imagine it because all you need to do is go onto your discovery page on social media. Think about the one with all the pictures, particular one, and click on anything on that discovery page. First of all, yes, there may be an algorithm, there may be particular things, but every single thing that you're going to click on is going to probably give you a different emotional experience.
Yeah.
So what you are doing when you go onto social media sometimes is that you are cycling through multiple experiences and emotional, experiences. And imagine what that does to your nervous system.
Sure.
So you're taking yourself,
overstimulation.
exactly. You're taking yourself on this emotional roller coaster, and you're doing it willingly,
Okay.
right? By giving this your attention. And so, of course, we're not here to kind of shame that,
of
right?
course.
Because, both of us, as we speak about it, has done it.
Of course.
It still happens. We both doom scroll.
Yeah.
And then, there's eventually an awareness that creeps in, often when I'm doing it, that's kind of like, okay, so we do know that our nervous system is responding to that because you can feel it.
Yes.
You can sense it.
Yeah.
And you said you could sense the anxiety rising. And that's what you're doing. So you're cycling between, you see something and it's really sad and heart-touching.
Yeah.
And then you see something exciting. And then you see something insanely funny.
Yeah.
And, comedic. And that's not normal.
Yeah.
To
It's not
spend
normal.
about 15, 20 minutes cycling through all of those different experiences and emotions, you're almost in some way signing up to dysregulate yourself.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we put the phone down, and none of us, not none of us, but sometimes we're not aware that that's just happened.
Yeah.
And whatever you do, you go and you kind of like in that dysregulated state, you go and engage with whatever
Yeah.
is happening in your life, in your daily life. Or you go and have a conversation and that type of thing. And so essentially it's really just about, again, when you're on social media, so now your attention has been, bought.
Yeah.
And your attention has been, I think, it's kind of been, what's the word? Like you've had focused attention.
Yes,
Someone's basically drawn your attention to something. And so now you're connected to that and disconnected from almost your internal state.
Got you.
Right. And if you're someone who you're inclined to pay attention to your nervous system or your states of regulation versus dysregulation, you may catch it.
Okay.
But in truth, most people don't.
Yeah.
And so, it just felt like something really like, and so it's something that I share often with my clients now is to say to them, okay, so that's really what it is that you're creating. And if you're here with me trying to work on kind of like regulating your nervous system or becoming more emotionally aware, and responsible for your emotional landscape, then, if you're giving your attention in that way, then that's something, again, to pay attention to and to notice.
I love about you speaking about regulating emotions. If I just think about it in terms of that, I wonder, again, it's just a hypothesis. It's not obviously, we just here to discuss it and make people think about things.
Yeah.
But I wonder in some way if kind of trying to dysregulate your emotions and your feelings, if that makes you kind of more erratic, that you would tend to purchase more erratically online because you're not in a regulated state. So you're not thinking as clearly as you possibly would.
Yep.
So it's just interesting. Just two things I want to mention to you. Two studies that just brought to mind. I remember reading this a good couple of months ago. But they're trying to figure out with regards to, when you stand in the lines, you're walking to a queue. Remember back in the day, there was always chewing gum as you walked down a, aisle, whatever, and people would tend to take chewing gum or whatever the sweets. And they often, like you said, there's a science behind it as well, that in terms of kids taking sweets off and trying to get that. But what I found interesting, they couldn't understand a couple of years ago why the sales of chewing gum had dropped.
Oh.
Substantially. I think it dropped by like 300%. They couldn't understand. They're trying to figure out what are the reasons for it. And actually what they found out is that with social media and phones, people would generally look around at when they're standing by a queue or till waiting to go to a till point. And they would generally that time have the tension to actually look and pick up sweets or chewing gum. Now they're on their phones.
Wow.
So it actually distracted them, the attention, because they are now on their phones from actually doing that purchasing. Another important one that I read, or another one that was quite interesting, I found some state in the States, in the United States of America, where they found that people were having a lot of accidents because of cell phone usage. Okay,
it's not a surprise.
Not a surprise at all. I think the surprising part is, well, not actually, if you think about it when I tell you this, but when they implemented and they put boards and stuff like signs around in that area to show that being on a cell phone is illegal while driving, guess what happened? do you think that they had more accidents or less accidents? One would generally assume there'd be less because it's maybe
because
an
there's
awareness.
something that's kind of like, what's the word? It's like reminding you.
Yes, reminding you. So generally I would have thought that, but it actually created the opposite effect.
Wow.
Because now people were aware that it's illegal to look at your phone. So they were scrolling down, looking down, putting their phones in their laps and having more accidents.
Unbelievable.
So
but also so believable.
You understand? Because I understand exactly. It's almost like we know, even in where we live in Cape Town, that, being on a cell phone is illegal. So you're very aware of traffic cops and people around you. So now you obviously sometimes you tend to keep it down. So
you're hiding it.
And about the divided attention and stuff.
Yes.
It makes so much sense. So I found those two studies quite useful to understand how human behavior works and what we pay attention to. Yeah.
Absolutely. That just feels like it really grounds a lot of what we're speaking about. And
Yeah, no, sorry.
No, I'm just thinking about like how that almost feels like an insistence on wanting to kind of be drawn into this thing and the power of that.
Yeah.
Of wanting to, because again, these things, as a reminder to everybody, these are all psychological cues.
Sure.
Right. And so again, all of these things and social media is built around, hooking in to those psychological cues for you.
Yeah.
And so, you wanting to know, but I must finish and I want to finish and I want this. It's deeply connected to the intentionality around social media.
Of course.
And giving you, I know we think we live with free choice, and we do have free will.
Yeah.
But I mean, it also shows us just how deeply we are controlled.
No, definitely. I mean, if I think of in terms of parenting styles, we like to think that our kids, kind of do what we say. But they do what they observe. And visual attention. So I've seen it so many times. I often wonder and go like, why is my son acting in this way? And then I realize that he's kind of seen it from us, his parents.
He's watched you.
Yeah, he's watched. Yeah. So it's very interesting, like you say, how that really transgresses and kind of flows in that state.
I'm thinking about, coming back to the quote that I started with.
Yeah.
Attention is the beginning of devotion. I'm thinking about a couple of years ago, I was listening to a talk and they were talking about kind of the definition of devotion meaning that you become the disciple of something.
Yeah.
Right. And so that has a very biblical connotation, of course.
Yeah.
But essentially it means that you become dedicated and loyal and passionate about, this thing or whatever it is that you are a disciple of, and attention being the beginning of devotion.
Yeah.
That I show you my devotion by giving you my attention.
Yeah.
And I was reading a book by Rupert Sheldrake called The Science Delusion.
Yeah.
We won't say who he's responding to when he called his book that. Oh, I think that's just me surmising.
Yeah.
But essentially he spoke about the root of the word attention and intention. And so it's from the Latin root tender, which means to stretch, as in tense and tension. So attention being ad tendia.
Got you.
Which is to stretch toward. And intention being intender, to stretch into.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, that's
so
defined.
think about attention being as toward something.
Yeah.
Right. I'm moving toward you. And we think about what that means in terms of connection. Human connection, almost in some way that whatever we pay attention to says something about our humanity.
Got you.
Or where we are in relation to our humanity, right? Maybe it's even the thing that makes us human. What it is that we give and our attention to, and then also the intentionality of it being that you stretch into something.
Gotcha.
So essentially intention is about depth, right? It's not just about the surface of something.
Gotcha. I love that. I just want to add to that. I think in linguistics, they often speak about what makes humans different to like mammals. The fact that we're dynamic in linguistic ability and the mind, and be able to communicate what we're feeling and thinking, and for people to reciprocate on those, on that. And it's so interesting with what you're saying with like attention as well, because there's an aspect of that that's also quite dynamic as a human being.
Yeah.
And it's just very interesting. I love the part we're saying about the stretching towards something and the inward as well. It's really, really fascinating.
And I think, again, to kind of just put that to our listeners around, where does that statement take you? Is there a question you can ask yourself around, what it is that you pay attention to, or just attention, human attention, and the fact that, as we've said, it's become this commodity that can be bought and sold.
Yeah.
And so I suppose it's an encouragement to just become intentional about your attention.
Yeah.
And that you are engaging with an intention to, I don't know, like I'm thinking about something like what we just mentioned about social media, about doom scrolling. So I think it can be different, right? And I think this with most things.
Yeah.
I think if you consciously do something, it creates a whole other sort of dynamic to the experience. So when I say this, I say that if you decide, again, right, this is not about just meandering, I think is the word you used earlier on, along with life. It's actually becoming intentional with your time, your energy, and in this case, your attention. And so if you decide, I'm going to doom scroll, so do that consciously. And the reason I say that is because it almost adds a different form of responsibility, right? Because first of all, you become responsible for that action. You can't just say, I was drawn into it, right? I chose this. So you can consciously doom scroll. Maybe you can even set a timer. And you can say, for 10 minutes, I'm going to doom scroll.
And I'm okay with it.
And I'm okay with that. Yeah. Exactly. So that you're not shaming yourself. There's almost like a compassion for yourself that you almost include in this experience. And so again, bring a consciousness to that and see what that does. See what that does for you, as opposed to just going, it was chosen for me. I was drawn into it. Again, there's almost like a responsibility that you get to abdicate. And intentionality means that you take responsibility.
I'm going to veer slightly to the left on this next comment, but it's kind of leading into something else we touch on in a future podcast too. But just recently, a family member of ours passed, and I was quite close to him. He was a cousin of mine, and his brother, which I had known for a few years, has had a few mental health struggles through the years, more circumstantial ones. And he particularly had a lot of struggles at work. And what happened is, about probably 2 months ago that his family member passed, I can see it's been causing a lot of strife inside of him. I can see it when I have chats with him, and he doesn't often speak about it. And then randomly we received a message early this week to say that in our family, he's actually going to resign from his job, and he's going to take some time to just reflect and see what he wants from life. But I know it's not particularly human attention. It's this aspect of self-awareness, of becoming aware of that. But I think there's also a part of attention to that.
Absolutely.
Paying attention to go like, maybe for a long time I haven't been paying attention to what I've been struggling with. Yep. Suddenly this loss or this trauma has triggered something inside of me that I now want to face.
Absolutely.
And I want to pay attention to it and help myself progress through what is left of my time as a commodity that I want to do better. Absolutely. And how many of us can say that at times we find situations similar to this, and Shaamiela, you've had to experience this with loss, that it is at a time you can either go like, it's a time that I really want to redirect my life and make a positive contribution for what's left ahead, or it's just a reminder for a frank period and go, well, I'll continue life as normal as it goes past. But the interesting part for me is that, that it is a process that you can engage in and go like, hey, this is an opportunity to reset. And maybe the second part of my life, if you are in that stage of your life, to go like, I can really make a difference going forward here.
Yeah, and I guess be intentional. But that's a beautiful reflection. And like, I'm almost relieved for him, that he paid attention to it, because it absolutely fits in with inward attention. There's paying attention to your internal state.
Yeah.
Which is a big part of being intentional. Yeah, and as you say, I think that loss has certainly done the exact same thing for me. I know with the loss of my mother, that was an absolute, it was the same outcome for me. I always think about the quote by Paulo Coelho about there is no better reminder of life than death. Because and actually I was just saying to a friend who sent me, I was watching one of her stories on social media.
Okay.
It's very intentional, everybody.
Okay.
So, just so you know.
All right.
But it was about, and I said to her, I feel like we should all watch someone pass at some point. And I think because there's something about that it gives you pause.
Yeah.
To reflect, and to be reminded that is a guarantee. There aren't many guarantees, but that's one of them.
Yeah.
That we'll all go through that. Yeah, but it was definitely one of the same. It's done the same thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
In that it gave me pause and kind of was like, okay, now we need to be deeply intentional about our time. Not that I wasn't.
Yeah.
But I think it just, deepened that in a really beautiful way.
Yeah.
In a way that was kind of, it was kind of awakening. And I think gave my life a different depth.
Yeah.
And I think really helped me connect to my authenticity.
Yeah.
A word that I know is overused, but genuinely made me go, okay. As there's often the question around what is it that you need in your life? I started asking my question, what do you want for your life?
Yeah.
And I don't know, when you hear about these stories and you hear about someone past, my question is often how come I get more time?
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that's be deeply philosophical, but that's always what I'm left with when I'm at a funeral or I've heard someone pass, I go, I get one more day.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I just think thanks for sharing that story about your mom. I know it's quite a personal thing as well for many people.
Yeah.
But I think for me as well, I remember that my dad had quite a big procedure and we weren't quite sure if he would there was a big chance that he wouldn't make it. And the fact that he was in hospital for practically half the year and having to observe his progress from being in a completely state of not sure what would happen to kind of recuperating and getting better. But like you're saying, going day by day and walking in and out of the hospital. And as you walk out, you go I have another chance of life. And you walk in and you see people of all age groups.
Yep.
So it's not a guarantee. You think that, we have until we, 80 or 100 to live. But it's not guaranteed to everyone. And I think if you have that awareness to know that, every day is a gift.
Yeah.
And we should really take it for what it is.
Yep.
Because it's like you say, it's really not guaranteed to everyone. But I think it's a beautiful experience because so often we signify death with a depressive type of conversation.
Yeah.
But I love what you said earlier, awakening, because it literally is an awakening.
Absolutely.
For many people.
Yeah.
So I guess it's how you position it in your mind, because if the positioning is incorrect, the outcome will be wrong for what you want from it. So for me, it's just in terms of, again, the conversations that you and I are having, it's really to provoke thought. And we hope that it steers people in the right direction. And that's the intention behind it. And also that it's relatable, like you're saying, the authenticity part about it. I know it is a buzzword, authenticity.
Yeah.
But I really, again, it's not about proving to people, but it's something that I've seen with you in our years of friendship. It's really something that has organically kind of just emanated from you because of the depth that and the encounters that you've been through. Authenticity is not just something that you can just kind of a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
Exactly. I sometimes think people think it's a cool thing to be authentic now, or a cool thing to say, I'm going to go see my therapist.
Yeah.
It's not about, we understand the need for therapists. I mean, you yourself are a therapist, but you know what I mean in terms of some people, how they position it, So as long as it's for the right reasons, I think that's the important part about it, yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that because I almost want to say to people, sometimes authenticity comes with a lot of loss.
Sure.
It comes with loss because there's things you have to face. and if you want to live authentically, sometimes that means giving up certain things.
Yeah.
And sometimes it also means giving up certain relationships, which is a big part of human connection, the essence of the human experience, and what our podcast is really about, the human story, is that essentially we are here to be connected to ourselves and to be connected to each other. And so, authenticity also on the other side of it brings to you more authentic connections. I'll put it that way.
True. And if you bring in the authentic version of yourself to a situation,
100%.
It opens up the next person to also react in the same way.
100%. Okay. And it gives you the relationships that, like the one that you and I have, that's built over many years and that you feel safe in.
Got you.
And feel seen in. And so then life is filled in a different way.
Got you.
But it's all I think connected to, I'm thinking about how this feels connected to what it is that you pay attention to.
Yeah.
And so authenticity means that you have to pay attention to your inward state. You have to. You cannot be authentic, live an authentic life if you are not paying attention to your internal state.
Yeah.
That you are aware of it and that you get to know the self.
Got you.
From that perspective. Yeah. Otherwise, it's again that word of kind of like you're meandering through life, and you're almost just like a passive, participant.
Yeah.
And
you
I
mean
think
like life's happening to you and not you taking. I know what you mean.
Exactly. And I think a great responsibility we can all take is that, that life happens and we are engaging with it. We are actively participating in that life, and making it. Yeah.
I love also just the last thing from me before I get a wrap up from you too, but I love what you said about, what are you after? There was a course we did a few years ago and it was an Australian guy. I never forget, he said it speaks about more energy, and also like psycho-spiritual, like whatever you believe in.
Yeah.
But he's like, what are you after? And he says, you literally have to say, like, what are you actually after?
Yeah.
We all know what we don't want.
Yes.
But do we actually vocalize and say what it is that we want?
Yeah. Do we go toward that thing?
Yeah. Because we were speaking earlier, when we weren't on the podcast recording, basically saying like, at times we feel guilty for asking for certain things. And there's many reasons for that because of societal norms, whatever the case might be. But literally, what are you after?
Absolutely. And so I feel like I just want to remind our listeners and ask the question that we asked at the beginning. What are you paying attention to?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Human Story. Fascinating discussion today. And please stay tuned until next time. From myself, Lincoln, we'll catch up again.
And from me, Shaamiela, we send you greetings and love. Thank you for being here.
Well, that was The Human Story brought to you by Yoked Media. Stay tuned for more on The Human Story.